I've always liked beat 'em up games, and I gotta say, they proved to be a real good challenge in my view. I played a few, such as Double Dragon, and then I played others like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Batman Returns. But there was this one game I didn't get a chance to take on until I played it on a, a compilation set, and then I got its Super Nintendo port. That game is none other than Capcom's own Final Fight, and that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video game review right now. This is Big D's Entertainment Rankings and Reviews. So, greetings, my fellow YouTubers, and welcome to Big D's Entertainment Rankings and Reviews. My name is Dual, better known to you as the Big D, back again with another video game ranking review. Excuse me, I almost said ranking, but I don't have any. Anyway, and I'm going to be talking about another arcade game that was ported over to numerous consoles, but I'll be talking about the arcade version mostly. Anyway, it's a great beat 'em up game. No, I'm not going to do Double Dragon, but I will do it later on, I promise. But I'm going to talk about the one game that really got me into liking brawlers a whole lot, and that's none other than Final Fight. Final Fight is an arcade beat 'em up game originally produced and developed by Capcom. It was released in 1989, and it would actually be the surprising start of a big franchise. Well, sort of big, not as big as Street Fighter would be. Now then, for this episode, now I will be talking about both arcade and home console ports of this game. Well, not all of them, just the ones that got released in the US. And I won't talk about the sequels or Mighty Final Fight, which was kind of a little parody of it, or other Final Fight games. If you would like for me to review the Final Fight sequels or Mighty Final Fight, I'll be more than happy to do those later on down the road. Anyway, the game was released in the arcades in Japan on November 25th, 1989. Then a week later, it got released worldwide. And well, it originally began development as a sequel to the original Street Fighter, which was released 2 years before, and this was 2 years before Street Fighter 2 became the next big thing. Its working title was Street Fighter 89, but the genre was switched from a fighting game to a beat 'em up, and the title was changed to Final Fight following the success of Double Dragon. Anyway, after its arcade release, it got ported to numerous systems. Now, its first port was for the Super Nintendo, first in Japan in 1990, then the following year in 1991 in North America, and in PAL territories in December of 1992. Sorry, everyone, got a little, you know. It later got a reissue as Final Fight Guide, but I'll talk about that in a little while. It got released on home computer systems in Europe and North America in 1991. Now the computer consoles have included the Amiga, the Amstrad CPC, the Atari ST, Commodore 64, and ZX Spectrum. It also, after that, in 1992, it was released in Japan for the Sharp X68000. In 1993, it got ported to the Sega-CD as Final Fight CD. And also, it got a Game Boy Advance release called Final Fight 1. Again, I'll talk about those ports as well. It was a commercial success, selling 30,000 arcade units worldwide while becoming the highest grossing arcade game of 1990 in Japan and the year's highest grossing arcade conversion kit in the US. The SNES version was a big seller as well, going on to sell 1.5 million copies worldwide. Which reminds me, here's my copy. I got this last year at the Game Exchange. It's still good and what have you, but I actually first played Final Fight on the Capcom Classics Collection on my now defunct PS2. It, the Super Nintendo port did so well, it would go on to have several sequels and even a spin off, which, of course, well, sort of a spin off, but a little parody called My Final Fight. Its development team later worked on the original Street Fighter II, which was released a couple of years later in 1991, and some of the characters from Final Fight later appeared as playable fighters in other entries of the franchise, such as the Street Fighter Alpha sub-series. Final Fight can be played up to 2 players simultaneously. Before the game begins, you choose between the 3 main characters. They are Mike Hagar, Cody, and Guy. Each has his own fighting style and attributes. Excuse me. Health gauges are displayed for both player and enemy characters. Now, of course, the controls consist of an 8-way joystick and 2 buttons for attacking and jumping, respectively. Now, pressing the attack button repeatedly when attacking an enemy or multiple enemies will cause the player character to perform a combo. The final blow of the combo can be changed to a throw if the player moves the joystick in the opposite direction just before landing it. The player can also perform jump attacks. Pressing the attack and jump button simultaneously allows the player to perform a special attack that strikes all surrounding enemies. But however, it will drain a portion of, well, a small portion anyway, of the player's health. Enemies can be grabbed by walking into one of them. When an enemy is grabbed, the player can perform a grab attack by pressing the attack button, or perform a throw by tilting the joystick left or right. The thrown enemy can be tossed at another for additional damage. Items such as weapons, health recovery items, and items awarding extra points can be picked up by standing over one and pressing the attack button. Weapons have limited uses and will disappear if the player is disarmed by an enemy too much or when the player moves to a new area. Now the game consists of 6 stages, or rounds as they're called, as well as 2 bonus rounds. In the Super Nintendo version, one of those rounds was omitted, but I'll get to that in a little bit. Each round takes place in a different section of, well, our setting, Metro City, such as the slums and the subway, with most rounds featuring more than one level. At the end of each round, the player will face a boss character unique to the level round. Now, let's get into now I'll give you the story. The game is set in a fictional city on the Atlantic coast in the US named Metro City, which kind of feels like New York City in ways. According to the game's intro, in the 1990s, or 1989 in the Japanese version, the city's crime rate, here I go again, rate reached alarming levels. But since the election of pro wrestler turned politician Mike Hagar as the new mayor, Metro City was changed and cleaned up drastically. Under his term, Hagar managed to suppress the crime rate of the city to its lowest points. While the citizens of Metro City were thankful for Hagar's hard work in curbing crime, the Mad Gear Gang, who had served as the dominant criminal organization of Metro City, would not go down so easily. Under the leadership of the crooked businessman known as Belger, the group attempted to bribe Hagar with a large payoff to keep him from going after them, to which Hagar refused. Still determined to bring Hagar under the rule they have, like the last mayor before him, Mad Gear proceeded to kidnap his daughter Jessica and create further unrest among the citizens. When Hagar finds out about his daughter's abduction, he becomes furious and decides to take his fight against Mad Gear to a personal level. Seeking additional manpower, Hagar recruits Cody Travers, an expert fighter and Jessica's boyfriend, as well as Guy, a ninja in training and Cody's good friend and/or rival. The 3 dedicate themselves to the complete eradication of the Mad Gear Gang and to rescue Jessica from their clutches. The game gained notoriety for its unique continue screen, where the player character is shown tied to a chair with a bundle of dynamite on the front table on the table in front of him. The character struggles to escape as the 10-second time limit counts down. If the player activates the continue option, a knife falls from the ceiling, disconnecting the fuse from the bomb. Anyway, I really like the way how the game feels and what have you. Also, the developers originally wanted Ken and Ryu from the original Street Fighter as the protagonists, but the idea was scrapped for a new plot and new settings. Also, the Street gang the player faces in the Mad Gear gang takes their name from the 1987 overhead racing game Mad Gear by Capcom. The game was released as Leadstorm outside Japan. Many of the characters after they're named after various rock musicians, including Axl Rose, Slash, Gene Simmons, Sid Vicious, and Billy Idol, which of course those two would replace them two ladies, so I'll get to in a little bit. Now all those were Axl, Slash, Simmons, Sid, and Billy. King Diamond, which was named Abigail, named after King Diamond's second album, also dons face paint similar to King Diamond's. Sodom, Roxy Music, which is Roxy, The Damned, which is Damned, Damnd, and Poison, named after Poison. With another two-player being from the Capcom game Forgotten Worlds. Hugo Andor, another notable enemy character, is based on the wrestler Andre the Giant. Because Capcom believed that players would feel bad beating up a woman, they know it in the manual that the female opponent Poison was a new half. Now I like the music for this as well. I like how it sounds in the arcade version. The SNES version is fine, what have you, even though it's in different keys though. Well, for most of it anyway. Which reminds me, I'm going to get to that right now. In 1991, it got released in North America, and a year before that in Japan for the Super Nintendo. And in 1992, it got released for PAL region. It later got released as part of the Wii's Virtual Console service in 2007 and the Wii U's Virtual Console in 2013. Unfortunately, they removed two-player co-op. The fifth stage, the industrial area level and playable and guy is removed. Most of the scene transitions were also edited out. In the arcade version, the player characters would be seen exiting the levels and breaking through doors, unlike the SNES version. Due to hardware limitations, the SNES version could only display 2 or 3 enemies on screen. Which that was fine, YB. Of course, in contrast to the arcade version, which could display up to 9 or 10 enemies on screen. To make up for this difference, the SNES version features more stopping points than the arcade version, and the enemy placement is vastly different. The English localization of the SNES port was censored for its content and features several differences from its Super Famicom in Japan counterpart. The first two bosses, Damned and Sullen, were renamed Thrasher and Katana, respectively. Belger's wheelchair was redrawn to look like an office chair. Poison and Roxy were replaced with 2 male enemies, Billy and Sid. All alcoholic references were removed, with 2 health recovery items replaced, which those were beer and whiskey. And the line, "Oh my god!" spoken by an enemy when his car is destroyed during the first bonus stage was changed to, "Oh my god." The blood splash effect shown when a character is stabbed was replaced by a generic explosion, and some of the darker skinned enemy characters were given lighter skin tones. So anyway. However, a couple years later in Japan, a revised edition called Final Fight Guy was released, and this replaced Cody with Guy as a selectable character. and included 4 difficulty settings and added other new features such as 2 new power-ups, although the industrial area stage and 2-player mode were still omitted. An American version of the game came out in June of '94, unfortunately as a rental-only game that was initially available at Blockbuster Video, and it was later given a limited release. And it had the same music as well. However, that game is extremely pricey. Trust me, I know. US Gold, with Capcom's help, released ports for the various, well, computer consoles like Amiga, Atari ST, Commodore 64, ZX Spectrum, and Amstrad CPC in PAL territories. And Creative Materials was the developer. In 1992, Capcom exclusively released the game for the Sharp X 68000. And this version is relatively a close conversion of the game, with the only notable changes being different music and a lower maximum on-screen enemies. The game came packaged with a CD soundtrack with all new remix tunes. In 1993, Capcom, drew A-Wave and Sega released Final Fight CD. This one retains nearly all the features of the arcade game that were removed in the SNES ports, namely the 2-player mode, industrial area stage, and the ability to play as any of the 3 main characters. And it also adds voice acting to the game's opening and ending sequences, an arranged version of the original soundtrack, and an exclusive time attack mode. However, the maximum number of on-screen enemies were still lower than the arcade version, and the combo attacks of Cody and Guy are pretty much slower. Now, for the players, Guy's the weakest, but he's the fastest. Cody is the medium in both ones. Hagar's the slowest, but is the strongest. Poison and Roxy were kept, but were redrawn with less revealing clothing. The graphics suffered from a more limited color palette, as well as fewer background details. Like the SNES version, the Sega-CD, or Mega-CD as it was called in Europe, was censored for the English localization with many of the same changes. In 2001, Capcom released, along with developer Suntech, Final Fight 1. But it was the same thing from the SNES version, but however, it had all 3 characters in the industrial area stage. But they brought back Sid and Billy, though, replacing the girls again. There's also dialogue scenes prior to each boss battle have been added, and the Street Fighter Alpha 3 renditions of Cody and Guy are featured. So that was still good and what have you. The first game was also released on the arcade game was released on the Capcom Classics Collection on PlayStation 2 and Xbox, as well as the Capcom Classics Collection Remix for PlayStation Portable. You can also find the arcade game on Final Fight Streetwise game for PlayStation and Xbox. And it was even ported into 2-in-1 bundle, Final Fight Double Impact, released digitally on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, along with Capcom's Magic Sword. And more recently, it was released in 2018 as part of the Capcom Beat 'em Up bundle with Captain Commando, the King of Dragons, Knights of the Round, Warriors of Fate, Armored Warriors, and Battle Circuit for PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and Windows. Now then, let me go ahead and give you a look at the game. Here's a screenshot of all 3 characters. I've actually never had a look at 3-player mode on Final Fight, the arcade game. You can see they're taking out the Andors in a mini level of stage of round 3. Now here's a shot from the SNES port, and there's Mike Hagar. There's a Simmons partially on there, and an Andor right behind in the subway stage, which is round two. And here's a freeze frame of what the Sega-CD version looks like. It in a way kind of does come close to looking like the actual arcade game. In the end, Final Fight really got some pretty good reviews. The Sega CD port was well received, just like the arcade game was. The SNES port even got good reviews. I see GamePro gave it 5 out of 5. Even so, it still proved to be a big success for Capcom. IGN ranked the SNES port as the 100th game on their top 100 SNES games of all time. Complex ranked it 87th on their best Super Nintendo games. In retrospective, the SNES game has 71.23% on game rankings, at 6.7 out of 10 on the Wii console from GameSpot, and IGN gave the Wii one an 8 out of 10, and 7 stars from Nintendo Life. So anyway, I really think Final Fight's awesome. After this, it would go on to have a couple of sequels on the Super Nintendo. If you'd like for me to talk about those, I'll be more than happy to talk about those later on down the road. But that's going to do it. What did you think of Final Fight? Have you ever played it? Have you played the arcade game, or maybe the SNES game, or maybe the Sega CD one, or maybe the other version? Maybe Final Fight one for the Game Boy Advance. Please feel free to let me know in the comment section below. If you like this video, click the like button below, subscribe, and be a part of the Big D Nation. And give me a moment. I'll be right back. Okay. And, well, I am going to take just the day off tomorrow. So next time you will get the Saturday morning TV log of the King Kong show from 1966. So anyway, and I will be giving you some more video game reviews next month for Super Sci-Fi September. You may be getting some good ones. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games, maybe? We'll see. Or maybe some DC or Marvel superhero games. Again, we'll see. Just stay tuned and we'll find out. So I do hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, check out my reviews for these other video games. In the upper left-hand corner is the review on Super Mario World. The upper right-hand corner is my review of another arcade game that got ported to Super Nintendo and even the Sega Genesis. And that's Konami's run gun game of the Old West Sunset Riders. Or if you like a video game adaptation of well, or should I say, let me rephrase it, an anime adaptation of a beat 'em up game into an animated series, go to the bottom left hand corner and see the Saturday morning TV log I did on the Double Dragon cartoon. Now, I will talk about the Double Dragon games later on, I promise. In the bottom right hand corner is the button you can click to subscribe. If you like rankings and reviews on movies, TV, music, video games, etc., then I'm your guy. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'm the Big D saying, see ya.